All righty. Here we go. Hector, Ralph, John, Foamfoot 420 says, I don't like the person who invented Monday. I am with you on that. Woo! Woo! Woo!
Now, Chris Duel.
It is Monday, the final Monday in June, as we get ready for July, which is going to roll in midweek. And then, of course, next weekend, or this coming weekend, to be more accurate, 4th of July weekend on the way. Lots and lots going on in the world of sports. Not all of it good. Of course, the College World Series saw the Texas Longhorns get our hopes up with a win Friday night over Mississippi State, but things did not go swimmingly on Saturday night against Mississippi State. Of course, Shannon Salty Sweeney, Longhorns needed to win 2 in a row, back-to-back against Mississippi State to advance. College World Series, very bizarre over the weekend, and the Horns were up for a lot of that game on Saturday night, but in the end, it just did not go their way.
Yeah, 46-0 when leading after 6 innings. Of course, after that 6th inning, it was tied 3 apiece, and then Mississippi State pulled away. You know, the first game against Mississippi State this weekend, there was a moment when everyone was like, okay, you kept this pitcher in too long, right? It brought Mississippi State back into it, and they were able to save themselves from that. And they did it once again Saturday night, and at that point, it was just too little too late. And unfortunately, Mississippi State gets the walk-off in the 9th. But overall, fantastic season for Texas baseball, especially just last year, that they just get their season underway and then the world stops. So just to see them get to play a full season after that, and then to get that far in the postseason, especially for those seniors, a lot of them went back and took some of the dirt from Omaha. Which is awesome. So they'll have that memory forever. But exciting things going forward for Texas baseball and Coach David Pierce.
In just a tough way, though. I mean, gosh, granted, Mississippi State, a great team, and now they're in the final against Vanderbilt, and we'll certainly talk about what happened in North Carolina State. The bizarre world of COVID rears its ugly head again in the world of sports, but those 2 losses to Mississippi State, you know, the Sunday a week ago, 2-1 to start off that College World Series for Texas, and then 4-3 on Saturday night. You lose to that team twice, both by 1 run. You get one of those goes another way, and you were in both of those games, and we'd be looking at Texas now in this final 2 of 3 championship series.
I know I'm going to get heat for this, and that's okay. I'm fine with it. But I think in the next few years, we're going to see the College World Series look to move out of Omaha.
Ooh. And why do you say that?
The weather is too much. We've had too many games start way late. Texas, again, they finished, half an inning and a half at 1 a.m. on Saturday morning to then go back and play later that night. I just think in the world of broadcasting, where that's where all the money is, and the NCAA, as we know, loves them some coin, they're losing so many eyeballs when these games get postponed due to rain, get delayed because of rain. They have to either play them way late or play them early the next morning. I just think that the branding of the College World Series, like, they can make so much more money if they can guarantee that prime time spot. Because you're losing eyeball. I mean, you lost my eyeballs. I was not staying up past midnight to see a game that, at least in the hands of Texas, it looked like we were okay at that point. And I get the tradition. I love tradition. I'm big on tradition for a lot of things. But I don't know, like, we're seeing the NFL move the combine out of Indianapolis because, hey, look at what we did with the draft. Let's do something like that with the combine. Let's get more money. Let's move this thing around. I think the NCAA will look to do something like that, especially when you have indoor places like Minute Maid, like in Arlington, that You don't have to worry about a rain delay or a lightning strike and then pause for 30 minutes.
Yeah, but you wonder, and it's a great point, and certainly as you bring a great comparison, which is happening, the NFL Combine is going to move and go to the highest bidder and move around, but you wonder, and again, you bring up two great facilities that can go indoor, outdoor, Globe Life Field in Arlington and Minute Maid Park in Houston, among others, which could eliminate the rain delay issue with a covered playing field. But if it's if you, for example, if you did that in the great state of Texas and the Longhorns weren't in it, and if it was Mississippi State versus Vanderbilt in your final, how many people will that draw in Arlington or in Houston? I guess is the one of the questions. You've got Omaha, which is kind of a mecca, and you mentioned tradition, and people like to, for whatever the reason, go to Omaha to watch the College World Series. If there were not local teams or teams in a state nearby, would the team's alumni and fans travel to go see that in a distant location? I guess the answer, you could say they're going to Omaha. Why not go to Arlington or Houston?
What else is there to do in Omaha when you're not watching your team play? I don't know. And I because the tradition thing, that's for sure, like that may hold them down. But I just, the way broadcasting is going and the rights for the broadcasting and the money that's there to be made, and especially with name, image, and likeness, where there, I just think it could be coming, especially after this year where we saw so many delays due to weather, and we could still see more delays as we get to the finals with Vandy and Mississippi State. And of course, we have to mention NC State. My guess is they were sleeping when that announcement came down at like 2:30 in the morning. Was it Saturday morning?
Yeah.
When the NCAA released a statement that Vanderbilt would be moving on due to COVID issues with NC State. I don't want to wake up like that.
No, that's awful. And here we go again. We saw COVID affect John Rahm. We've seen it affect so many games and so many sports, and just add the College World Series. And North Carolina State believed that they were going to live to fight another day in the College World Series. And as you mentioned, it comes down at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
And I imagine, some of those players, coaches, and staffers may have already been asleep and may have woken up to that news. And it must have been a very rude awakening.
Yeah, the timing of that, that's just bad by the NCAA. Even if they did notify them beforehand, they probably had to call and wake them up, which, again, you don't want to wake up like that. Like, let me get some coffee into me first before you want the good news or the bad news. Well, there is no good news. So here's the bad news. Oh, I feel so bad for them. I think I'm team Mississippi State for these finals, just because I don't think Vanderbilt deserves to be there. And they did get that, like, they barely beat Stanford.
Yeah. And while you say, you're pulling for Mississippi State in this finals matchup, best 2 of 3 for the College World Series, Mississippi State versus Vanderbilt, I wonder, and we were so excited, and I was thinking, especially when Texas won on Friday night, setting up that Saturday night matchup against Mississippi State, winner advances to the final round early this week. I was so excited, and then I'm watching that game on Saturday night, and Texas had a lead, through much of that game until the late innings. So, gosh, it's just so my point is, I wonder how many Longhorns fans, and I wonder how many baseball fans in Texas who maybe might not necessarily be a Longhorns fan, but you're a fan of the state of Texas. I mean, I obviously would like the Longhorns to win it, but had it been A&M, had it been Texas Tech, had it been another team, Baylor from the state of Texas, I'd be extra interested and I would watch. I don't know that I'm going to watch now that it's Mississippi State versus Vanderbilt.
I mean, it's almost like the college football playoff, right? It was just SEC versus SEC.
Yeah.
Representation matters. And no one else is getting any other than the SEC.
Another big victory for the SEC. Let's go ahead and set the table. It is the Chris Duel Show. She is Shannon Salty Sweeney. You can join us throughout the morning by dialing us up on the phone lines if you want to jump in and talk to us on the phones. Phone number 800-707-9760. Already getting a bunch of people joining us on the video feed. A number of ways to access the video feed. You can do it via Facebook on AM 1300 The Zone and Ticket 760's Facebook page. There is a YouTube portal to get to the live stream as well. Twitch will also get you in. Our soundscape stylist, Dave Ayler, wearing a Kiss t-shirt. I know you're a metal guy, and this may be the first time that I've seen you in a Kiss t-shirt. I don't know that I would have predicted that you would be into the rock band Kiss.
My very first concert I went to was Kiss.
My goodness.
1986-ish.
And what arena? Where was that concert?
That was in what used to be the Kiel Auditorium in St. Louis, which is the Enterprise Center now, where the Blues play. It's been remodeled a bunch of times.
I don't know. I've been to a lot of concerts. I don't know that I could say what my first concert was. Gosh.
I remember every song, everything I saw that day.
Wow.
Or that night.
Shannon, do you remember your first concert ever?
Of course. NSYNC Celebrity Tour. San Antonio, Texas, 2002.
Was that the Alamo Dome?
No, it was an arena.
AT&T Center.
Is that what it was at the time?
02 would have been SBC Center.
I think so.
Where the Spurs play.
Yeah.
And then shortly thereafter, Britney Spears, like 3 to 4 weeks later. So it all.
Yeah. And my goodness, is she in the news right now?
Oh, yeah.
She's like 30. How does this happen? She's 39 and her dad is her conservator of her estate at 39? My God.
She's been in this for like 13 years and she was down pretty bad when she got into it. And I think the dad took advantage of that and it's really binding legally. And so it's been a struggle for her to get out. I mean, at this point, whether or not she ever performs again, she just needs her life.
Yeah.
As a human. So hoping she gets that. Yeah. Hashtag free Britney.
Free Britney. And I even heard that he doesn't let her have a cell phone or he controls how she 39. Yeah, and she's a mega, we all know her name. She's granted she's had issues, but she's a global superstar.
Yeah. And like she's forced to take certain birth control so she can't have another baby and she's not allowed to get married to her boyfriend. And if you've heard any of her testimony from last week, it is hard to listen to. And she's using her real voice, so it almost doesn't sound like her because we're so used to her kind of being forced to use that baby voice.
And what does her real voice sound like? I haven't heard. I've read little blurbs, but I haven't heard the testimony.
It's just a little lower.
Okay.
Yeah, and pitch. So it's not like the squealy kind of baby voice that she's kind of been forced to use throughout the years.
Yeah, I was never a big fan, obviously. I mean, I could take her or leave her, but my God, for an adult to have to go through this. And granted, we've talked about mental health a lot lately, especially in the world of sports. And for someone who has gone through and dealt with some mental health issues clearly, and hopefully she has addressed them and is on the other side of them and is working through them. But to then have this, to kind of be a slave to your father who is reaping the benefits of all of your earnings as a recording artist and as a performer, my God, that's awful.
Yeah, she said 1 year she made $56 million from her 1 year of the Vegas residency, and she was given an allowance of $2,000 a week.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah, I'm with you. Free Britney, and I hope this court case goes her way, and then I hope she does a little comeback. I hope that would be cool for her. That would be a cool story. That would be a cool final, or maybe not even a final chapter, but a cool next chapter for Britney Spears. I hope it all works out for her.
Yeah, I dig it. And her last performance to date was at Coda.
No kidding.
The last time she performed was when she ended her tour at Circuit of the Americas during F1. So I mean, if she's ever going to come back, I mean, it's probably only right that she would kick it off here in Texas.
Woo!
Just saying.
Yeah, and because of all she's been through, I mean, I might even watch or go to a concert like that just to support her, just because I think it would be a good thing. All right, we got a lot to talk about all morning long. I did watch The Shop to see what team Tom Brady and what quarterback Tom Brady was dogging based on that preview. Didn't exactly get what I was expecting. We'll talk about that. Trae Young injured by an official last night, by a referee in the NBA game. That's going to really perhaps wreak havoc on the Atlanta Hawks' hopes of advancing to the NBA Finals. We'll talk NBA. We'll talk more College World Series. We'll talk NFL, of course. Simone Biles in the news as she qualifies for the Olympics. Becky Hammon passed over once again, this time by the Portland Trail Blazers. We will get into that. NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, college sports, and more. Shannon's Salty Shakedown in the 7 o'clock hour, along with sports history and sports birthdays. Andy Everett, our golf guru and the voice of UTSA Athletics, going to join us late in the show at 8:35. And coming up, your high five play of the day. That's always fun. Once again, you can join us on the phone lines, 800-707-9760. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney, wearing his KISS t-shirt, reminding him of his first concert ever. He is Super Dave Ayler. I'm Chris. Thanks for hanging out with us. You're listening to The Chris Duel Show. Anthony Del Toro. Oh, that's loud. Anthony Del Toro, Ralph Balderas. Easy for me to say, Ralph Balderas. Luisa Alanis. Sometimes my tongue and my mouth don't work at 6:27 in the morning. Hector Gomez. John Williams. Jason Paniagua. Buenos dias. Whew. Excuse me. Imagine that, yawning.
Now, be honest. Do I look tan or do I look red? Because I have the lights even lower to make me look tan today, not extremely red. I'm a lobster.
It looks like you got sun.
Oh, I got sun,
Okay.
but I promise you I am red.
Where'd you get the sun? What happened?
The backyard. It's like, oh, it's finally not raining this weekend. It's not like too hot. Let me lay in the pool. Wasn't even out there an hour, and I did put sunscreen on.
Wow.
Just
So that new patio furniture. Yep. Cody Webb, welcome in. I'm going to grab coffee. God knows I need it. I got coffee. I feel better. Feeling better after I drink it. Oh! Oh, cool. Thank you. Okay. Ah. High five play of the day coming up. Let's see, an athlete tested positive in Japan. They will strengthen health controls. A Ugandan athlete tested positive for COVID at the town hosting the training camp. Why are they already there on the 28th of June when the Olympics don't start till the 23rd? Yeah, I know we talked about there was some women's, I think a soccer team that was there really early. I guess playing matches around the country of Japan. Here we come. That would be Kiss. Chris Duel show along with Shannon Salty Sweeney as we come back to some music by Kiss as soundscape stylist Dave Ayler wearing his Kiss t-shirt. And Dave, You told me during the break there's a reason for the T-shirt. There's a reason for that song. What is happening in the world of Kiss?
On A&E's biography, last night was the first 2 hours of the Kiss biography on A&E. Tonight is the second 2 hours.
Woo!
Two-parter.
And I'm assuming you watched the first 2 hours.
It's on my DVR. It was past my bedtime.
Oh, so we don't know yet if it's any good.
No.
Okay.
I've seen all those biographies are really good. I've seen them on other people.
I think I did hear
2 hours tonight, or last night, 2 hours tonight.
Very cool. They have certainly had longevity. They've been around forever. Now, I have heard they were like doing their last tour and then COVID hit. So what's the status as far as their final tour? Are they done or are they going to resume it?
Okay, well, this shirt is from their farewell tour, which was in 2000, which I think they're still on. And I think it's supposed to end at the end of this year or early next year or something. But they're a shell of their former selves now.
Yeah. And I was listening to satellite radio yesterday, and Aerosmith, not Steven Tyler, some member of Aerosmith said, we may not tour again because we're just getting old. It's like we're old and it's not easy to go on tour anymore.
I'm a big fan of Kiss, but they should have hung it up about 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, but when you can be a money machine and keep raking it in, even in your 70s, I guess you keep raking it in.
I guess.
I don't know. And yet the Rolling Stones just keep on keeping on. So
sounds like y'all are talking about the Tom Brady music.
It's probably close to that. Well, except Tom Brady can still play. Tom Brady can still play. Kiss is they're getting up there.
Well, and we will talk some Tom Brady coming up, Shannon. I mean, I did see the shop, and he kind of, and it made some headlines, alluded to the fact that the end may be very near for his NFL career. We will get into that. But before we do any of that, we should dive into the high five play of the day. So we like handing out the high fives. It's the right thing to do. In fact, somebody you may have just heard of might get a high five. We'll talk about it. Shannon knows the high five, not just the name of the segment, a cool place to hang out and play and eat and drink. It's kid friendly. It's adult friendly. It's got something for everybody. 2 locations in Austin. Tell the people about High Five, Shannon.
Yes, sir. One out on Anderson Lane, Central Austin, and one out in Lakeway. In the Lakeway location, don't forget, July 4th, I've got some more details for you. 11 to 4 on July 4th. Sensory-friendly bowling in the upstairs, which is really cool. I've never thought you could bowl upstairs. I thought bowling lanes would be too heavy for that to happen, but I'm no architect. So it can happen. And High Five will be giving back 15% of proceeds from all things food and all of the activities from that day to Autism Society of Texas. So it's going to be a great event. Also, I know the weather can change on a dime, but right now I'm seeing it's probably going to be raining on 4th of July. So it's all the more reason to get indoors and experience High Five out in Lakeway. And yes, Chris, we did allude to our high five of the day. It is actually going to the very old and still very good at football for whatever reason, Tom Brady. It's probably because of that diet he eats, right? Or maybe it's that special tequila he was drinking on the boat. Which leads us to one of the moments that he discussed on the shop over the weekend, where he talked about that viral video of him tossing the trophy from his boat to another. Here is a quick clip of that.
You had a lot of fun during the parade. I remember. What was that experience for you, like just celebrating that?
It was fun, I've been in the Northeast for 20 years, so it's like freezing cold. Every time we went, it was like 38 and you were freezing. By the end of the parade, you're like, get me home, This round on the boat, it's 85 degrees. We're drinking tequila, all day. And I got the Super Bowl trophy in my hand. I'm in my boat. Chelsea's where the other boat is. I'm like, I'm going to throw it to my boys over there. So I throw it, and the bottom of this trophy is sharp.
Oh,
I mean, it could have gone so bad.
The best part is you hear everyone on Tom's boat saying, no, Tom, no. Tom's like, I got it.
That was my daughter, so she's 8 years old at the time. And she goes, Daddy, no. As I'm like, oh, no.
I love it. And I love that he talked about how sharp it was, because I don't think we were thinking about the actual trophy
No.
hurting anyone else. I think everyone was like, oh, the trophy, don't let it sink. But the fact that he could have like really injured somebody or something while tossing that trophy. And he did allude to his time in the Patriots, right? He's like, it's 38 degrees outside. I remember those parades always ended with, right? They were at a stage and he always did like a mic drop moment thing, but they were always really cheesy. These really awful speeches. We didn't get a speech from him this time around. I like Tampa Tom Brady on a boat parade better than I do a standard parade up in the Great White North, that is New England. But you, sir, actually had time to sit down and watch this entire episode. So I want to get your takeaways here.
It was enjoyable. What wasn't enjoyable for me, it did have Draymond Green on,
Right.
and I'm just, Draymond Green just, and you can imagine what he had to say, just talking about how much he doesn't give a blank about anything. And yep, that's Draymond. Chelsea Handler was on. I always enjoyed Chelsea Handler. She's funny. And then a rapper, Kid Cudi. Do you know who the Kid Cudi is?
Kid Cudi.
Cudi. I didn't even know. Cudi. I didn't even know the dude. But he was like very impressed with himself. And he was good. But one of the things Tom Brady, first of all, big headline, we don't find out. We waited all week. We saw the promo from HBO where he's talking about an NFL team that he was considering going to, and they wanted to stay with the quarterback he had. And the clip was, you're going to stay with that, M. Blanker. That's what the clip was. That's what they showed us, that there was no elaboration. There was no follow-up question. We didn't find out who that was. So the speculation will continue. I was a little bit disappointed by that.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't blame HBO for using that as the tease, but yeah, it's like when you see a movie trailer for a comedy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that looks really funny. And then you watch the movie and the best bits were all in the trailer. That wasn't that funny.
Yes. So there was that. And then there was this other moment where they were just talking about his career. And then, somebody goes, well, and here you are near the end. The end is coming soon. And Brady kind of said, yeah, the end is coming soon. Which you think about Brady and you think about his mindset. And I would have expected Brady to go, well, the end is going to come whenever it comes, but I'm going to keep fighting. It almost, to hear him, it was almost like a Freudian slip. It was almost like something that was on his mind that he just let slip out. In that moment, they didn't, again, the people on the panel didn't dwell on it and didn't follow up on it. And then it made then I saw watching, later that night and the next day on social media, there were headlines and there were people talking about him saying that. He didn't dwell on it, but it did kind of seem a little revealing that it was almost top of mind and it was almost something on his mind that this NFL career is going to end sooner than later.
Do you think we'll get a Kobe year out of him where we know it's his last year? I kind of lean on the side of we won't, because everyone says in the NFL, when you fall off quickly.
Yeah.
I can't imagine him having a season where he's like, oh, that's like, it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Yeah.
Let me just play one more so I can get that final wave and goodbye. But considering all that he has done, I would enjoy a farewell season.
Yeah.
But I don't know that we're going to get that warning.
Well, and it's a great point, Shannon. And, you think about Drew Brees and this past season with Drew Brees, the more we looked at him, especially as the season progressed, the more there were certain throws he couldn't make that he used to make. And the more most of us and football experts believed that he's done. And there was even that moment at the end of the season, even though you and I and other people, when we saw him walking off the field in that playoff loss to Brady and the Buccaneers, the way going into the tunnel, he looked back to the field and it sure looked like a final glance back. And then later we saw the footage of he and Brady and the family throwing the football with the kids on the field after the game for quite some time. But I think if Brees had the skills, I think Brees would have come back. And to your point, exactly what you said, when a quarterback or an athlete, and most specifically a quarterback, loses it in the NFL, the drop-off is fast. So I would agree, because of that, It's going to probably happen during a season. It's going to probably happen quickly, and probably nobody's going to know it better than Brady, who is very analytical and probably harder on himself than anyone as far as his football skills. So, and even the fact that he would say something like this on the HBO show, maybe he knows something we don't know as far as things he cannot do this year that maybe he could have done in previous years.
Now, I haven't had time to sit down and watch it, but I did see other headlines talking about how he says 90% of what he says isn't what he's thinking.
Yes.
Which I think alludes to just what you were talking about of like,
Mhm.
he's the only one that will know.
Yeah.
He'll be saying something over. He's like a magician. He's doing this trick, but over here is something completely different going on.
Well, and that was a pretty funny.
He also sounds like a sociopath.
Well, but he gave a reason for that, and it was actually a funny moment in the discussion where he said, he says, when I'm in a press conference, I'm not, what I'm thinking is not what I'm saying. And the reason he said, I don't want to give any other team another edge. And he said, especially if we're going up against a guy and the cornerback's not that good. And he said, I might just outright lie and go, wow, that guy's a really good cornerback. He's really, really good. I don't know that we're going to test him, where he says, in my mind, it's like, I'm going to torch that guy all day. I can't wait to go torch that guy. But he said, I'm not going to say that because then the team can plan around that. And so it was kind of interesting to hear him explain his mindset, and he's not at all revealing in a press conference situation regarding football.
He might make a great mass murderer or something with the ability
Yes,
to
he
do
might.
that.
Yes, he might.
Even though I know they're white lies, but
yeah.
Still.
And then and Draymond Green did say this, which was kind of interesting. And again, I don't like Draymond, but he was talking about the NBA and how it's kind of a ridiculous double standard after a game when he loses, when he's played badly, or when he's been ejected, to then force him to give an interview, because he said, clearly I'm peed off. He said, clearly I'm angry. And now you're going to ask me a question and you want me to give the straight answer. And he goes, if I give the straight answer, I'm going to get fined because I'm angry. And you're asking me questions when I'm clearly angry and not in a good mood. So it was kind of an interesting back and forth between he and Brady, where Brady says, well, I'm not going to tell you how I feel. And yet Draymond, and I'm one of the guys critical of Draymond just because I don't like his attitude and I don't like some of the things he does on the court, kicking other dudes in the groin and saying that's just the way I take a jump shot. But Draymond was kind of making a point about, and they were talking about, the tennis player who had to withdraw from the French Open because she didn't want to talk to the media. And thank you. And they were all very supportive of her. And they said it's kind of, here we are in leagues that force us to talk to the media. And, if we say what's on our mind, we're going to get fined.
Yeah, I agree. There's, especially now with the access some media has and how quick everything can go out and how it's all, that however many characters you can put on Twitter, like that's what they want. And so, yeah, they want to go to a guy like Draymond who, when he's not peeved, he's saying some things that are clickbait worthy. Yeah, we want to go to you when you're peeved. So there's definitely a line, but unfortunately it's different from sport to sport. There is no direct media versus athlete rule book.
But I would, I would recommend you watch the episode. And I've watched a few clips. I've never watched a lot of The Shop, which is LeBron James' show on HBO that Brady and Draymond and Chelsea Handler and Kid Cudi were on. But it's good. And they do seem to be talking candidly. A lot of F-bombs. I was reading one review, and how did they put this? Brady raised some eyebrows in expletive-laden diatribe. Lots and lots of F-bombs. Brady has
seen it on NFL game nights.
Yeah, I guess.
You don't hear it.
But yeah, you don't hear it. And quite a few of them from Brady, which was a little, even for me, I'm no prude, and I drop F-bombs myself, especially when the Cowboys are losing. throughout most of Tony Romo's career in the fourth quarter, you'd hear some F-bombs from me during Cowboys games. But I mean, to hear them as rapidly and in succession from Brady was a little bit jarring. But again, I'd rather in a situation like that, people be who they are. And I think that's part of the allure of that show, The Shop, because they seem to be speaking candidly.
I find it interesting that LeBron wasn't there because I think he appears on most of those episodes.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting to see LeBron, the crowned himself GOAT, king, whatever.
Yeah.
Brady, who is without a doubt the king in everyone's mind in his perspective sport.
My only guess is, they were talking about the French Open, and I'd have to go back and look at timeline. Maybe when it was filmed, LeBron and the Lakers were still alive. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'd have to go check that. But I don't know, but that might be one of the reasons. But it would have been fascinating.
LeBron's ego can't handle
be in the same room with Brady.
Yeah, but the 7 rings are too much for him.
But it would be, that would be fascinating. Just round up the GOATs. Wouldn't that be great? Like LeBron in a room with Brady and even maybe a Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and they're all drinking each other's tequila because they all have tequila.
There you go.
Just a tequila taste test party.
And Scottie Pippen, you're not allowed with your bourbon.
What is wrong with him?
And oh, by the way, Scottie Pippen, Shannon, as you know, back in the news, apparently a little spat with Stephen A. We'll get into that coming up as well. Lots and lots to talk about. She is Shannon Salty Sweeney. Dave Ayler wearing the Kiss Army t-shirt, your soundscape stylist. Coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, we've got your Salty Shakedown, sports history, sports birthdays, and more. Lots more to get into, and we will in the world of sports involving the Olympics. We'll talk NFL football, Major League Baseball. Astros have lost 2 out of 3 after all those wins, but they're still in first place in the AL West. We'll talk some Major League Baseball as well on the Chris Duel Show. Good morning, Beth Settle. Welcome in, Beth, and Steve DeRocco, The Rock, who I guess is back from New Orleans if The Rock is in here. I can't imagine he's up at 6:54 in New Orleans. But then again, he's a madman, so anything's possible. Foamfoot 420, welcome. Jason Paniagua, Clint Proctor, Cody Webb, Anthony Del Toro, Ralph Balderas, Luisa Alanis, Hector Gomez, Jason, you were right on the drummer from Aerosmith. Here we go. Hour number 2. 7 o'clock hour.
Is the Chris Duel Show. Now, Chris Duel.
7 o'clock hour well underway on this Monday, June 28th, the final Monday in the month of June. Midweek, we will dive into the month of July, and the upcoming 4th of July weekend is on the way. Welcome in. It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Lots to talk about from the NBA, and last night, Trae Young injured by the official. Injured by a ref. It's a little rough. We haven't gotten into that yet. We will get into that. We talked College World Series. Bizarre weekend in the College World Series. North Carolina State ousted by COVID. Longhorns ousted by Mississippi State. So your best 2 out of 3 College World Series championship series, all SEC, Mississippi State versus Vanderbilt. We can talk more about that. Astros lose 2 out of their last 3 after going on that long streak. We'll talk some Major League Baseball. Houston Astros. Your first pitcher has been ejected based on the new crackdown on foreign substances being used by pitchers on baseballs in Major League Baseball. We will get into that as well. Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Dave Ayler is your soundscape stylist. And Shannon, another story that happened over the weekend. Becky Hammon, the assistant coach of the San Antonio Spurs, who was said to be a finalist for the Portland Trail Blazers job, passed over in Portland as they will go with Chauncey Billups as their head coach. Not the best news for Becky Hammon, but if you're a Spurs fan, keeping Becky around, if that is indeed how this plays out, could benefit the Spurs in the long run.
I've seen headlines that are, I think people are starting to feel like her name is being used as a token, right? Look, she's in the conversation. When at this point, I think a majority of people feel like she should be given or has earned a head coaching position. I don't read too much into it because we don't know what those conversations were like. We don't know what those relationships were like beforehand. But I can see the argument of, look, Jason Kidd, former player in the NBA, and Chauncey Billups, former player in the NBA. They're getting their shot before her. Okay. So her time will come.
Yeah.
And who knows, like we talk about, she needs to be in a good situation that won't create this vibe and storyline that, okay, she's not good enough because it's the situation she's in. She needs to be in the right situation to be successful. And maybe, there's that issue of Dame not wanting to be there right now. What is that team without Dame? I don't think they're a playoff team.
Yeah.
So I don't feel too. I think her time will come, and when it does, it'll be the right situation. And this just wasn't it.
And I think we both agree, and I think most people agree. Of course, we don't know how long Coach Greg Popovich is going to stick around with the Spurs. He will turn 73 in January during this coming season. I love Pop. I know some people critical of him mainly for his being outspoken politically. But I just think Pop is a huge asset. I think he's he's easily a Hall of Famer. He would be a Hall of Famer right now. He has declined induction into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. He would already be in. I think he's arguably, because he's done what he's done in such a small market, I think you compare him to Red Auerbach of the Boston Celtics when there were like 8 teams in the league and the Celtics had all the best players. You compare him to Phil Jackson, who was in larger markets in Chicago and Los Angeles and had superstars in those large markets. I think the case can be made. Maybe Pop is the greatest coach ever for doing what he did with the Spurs in a small market. So I don't want him to leave anytime soon. But you look at Becky Hammon, and I still believe, Shannon, her best situation would be San Antonio if it opened up for her, and if it opened up for her relatively soon, in that she's already a part of the culture. She's already coached up these players on this roster. I think it would be an easy fit. Obviously, ownership and management knows her well and supports her. And again, who knows what closed door conversations she may or may not have already had with Greg Popovich and team ownership. She might already know what Pop's planning, when he's planning it, and where she fits in or doesn't fit in as part of the Spurs' long-term head coaching plans.
Yeah. And wherever she gets hired, if it's in San Antonio, if it's elsewhere, there will be the naysayers for like, they only gave it to her because she's a girl and they want to make headlines. They want to be the first. Oh, she got the Spurs gig. Is basically nepotism. She was handed the key. Like, she'll get a job when she gets a job.
Yeah.
It'll be great. First woman, whatever. But I don't know. I think people are reading too much into it at this point.
Yeah, and I think two things could be going on as well, and you alluded to one of them. Is she kind of being used as a pawn? Does the NBA kind of want to make sure behind the scenes that she is being interviewed? And we heard she was interviewed for the Portland job and the Orlando Magic job. Is it kind of like the Rooney Rule in football, which stipulates that you interview minority candidates, specifically African-American candidates, and teams do it, and then still, very qualified African-American head coaches often are passed up for that job. So you wonder if there might be, if maybe these teams are being encouraged by the league. Hey, we really need to, if none of us interviewed Becky, that wouldn't look good. So somebody needs to interview Becky and make her a finalist. And then the other flip side of that is, and maybe the Portland Trailblazers went through this, it takes courage to pull the trigger. When you find somebody needs to pull the trigger on the first ever female head coach in the NBA. I think you and I and a lot of people who have paid attention to Becky Hammon believe she's very, very qualified to be a head coach in the NBA, but it is going to take, because there will be some kind of backlash, perhaps even from my people, the Neanderthals. I took the 23andMe test. I am 0.5% Neanderthal. There could be some Neanderthals who come out and are against this ultimately, but hopefully it happens sooner than later. And as a Spurs fan, and I talked about Mike Budenholzer when we were worried about his job when he was down 2-0 to the Brooklyn Nets, and him maybe becoming a head coaching candidate in San Antonio someday, given his wealth of experience both in Atlanta and Milwaukee as a head coach, and he is the longest tenured Pop assistant. I kind of didn't want that to happen so that Becky could kind of be it in San Antonio. And as we speak on this Monday morning, I think Becky is still a viable option, perhaps as the next head coach of the Spurs whenever that position opens up.
I'm still thinking about, you mentioned the Rooney Rule, and I think that's exactly, I had that floating around, but I didn't know if, I'm not super versed on it, but I very much agree that it's starting early. I want her to become the Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah.
But I like the Spurs gig for her. And you mentioned Budenholzer. I mean, that's a great segue into last night, because from being down 0-2 to the Nets, and not just, they lost a game by a couple points. I mean, beat downs.
Yeah.
0-2. Looked like it was written for them. End of season. After last night, they take the lead in that series against the Hawks 2-1. Trae Young has to go in for an MRI today, thanks to a referee who got underneath him. Don't know how that happens, but it did. And the Bucks looks like they've pretty much punched their ticket to the finals, and in return, Budenholzer getting to keep his job there in Milwaukee.
Well, and again, it's still just 2-1, and you make a good point. And I did see that play live last night, and I did see multiple replays. It looked very inadvertent, And if you haven't seen it, it certainly wasn't. The ref didn't get underneath him in the same way Zaza Pachulia got underneath Kawhi Leonard a number of years ago in the Western Conference Finals. A ref was on the sidelines. He was, inbounds near the sideline. Trae Young takes a jump shot, comes down on the ref. One of his feet hits the ref on the shoe and rolls the ankle for Trae Young. As you mentioned, Shannon, he will have an MRI, but depending on that, it is still just 2-1. Game 4 will be in Atlanta if Atlanta can find a way to get game 4. And, we did see that game 7 of the previous series for the Hawks when Trae Young did not have the good game and did not have a good first 3 quarters, and other people were able to step up when he was having an off night. Clearly, you look at Trae Young's performance last night, he was on fire up until that moment late in the third quarter when he does have the injury by stepping on the ref's foot. He was not, he was out much of the game after that, was not effective when he was in the game after that. So a lot of the hopes for the Atlanta Hawks clearly hinge on that ankle of Trae Young's. But at 2-1, kind of like that Clippers series, in that series, Phoenix has gone up 3-1 in that series, and you got to believe 3-1 is a commanding lead. So that's certainly what Milwaukee hopes to do in game 4 of that series in the Eastern Conference Finals.
And you mentioned, the Hawks being able to help them in game 7 when Trae Young wasn't at his best. I think the Bucks rely on Chris Middleton right now just as much as they do Giannis for having great games. But if you were to take to the Twitterverse, people are like, he has these fantastic games, Chris Middleton. He went off last night, but then the next game he turns around and he's the dude from Along Came Polly. Raindrop and clank. So if he's going to be the superstar that he has shown at times that he can be, it may be on him to get them over the hump and get them into the finals. Because I agree, it's not over till it's over.
Yeah.
But it feels over.
Well, and my goodness, especially this playoff run, so many times we thought a series was over. Most specifically, Brooklyn Nets up 2-0 on the Bucks. I know, yeah.
Where amazing happens.
Well, and Chris Middleton, yes, just looking at his numbers last night, you're right. Chris Middleton, 42 minutes, 38 points for Chris Middleton, 15 of 26 from the field, 6 of 12, 50% from three-point country. He had 11 rebounds, so he gets a double-double. So you had 38 for Middleton, 33 for Giannis last night. Giannis had 33 and 11. Middleton had 38 and 11. So they both had a lot of, they both had a double-double. They both had a lot of rebounds. And when those two guys do what they did last night, they're tough to beat. And even though Trae Young had that injury in the third quarter, Trae Young still finishes with 35 points last night. So Trae Young still a major factor, but Bucks win that game 113-102 to take the 2-1 lead in that series. And I'm pretty sure, let me go ahead and click on tonight's game between the Clippers and the Suns. Yeah, that game's 8:00 tonight. That's on the 4-letter network. Suns up 3-1, and that game in Phoenix. So Phoenix in their house tonight, Shannon, with an opportunity to wrap up that series, which, and now we're hearing deja vu for Spurs fans. We're hearing reports that our good buddy Kawhi Leonard is unhappy with the Clippers medical staff. Shocker.
What were your thoughts when you saw him chilling in the suite during that last game?
It's
LA.
It's
sit with your team, bro.
It's exactly. It's leadership. That is non-leadership. Sit with your team, be a leader, be locked in, be engaged. Ty Lue trying to say the right things and maybe trying to keep his job. Ty Lue keeps saying, oh man, ever since the injury, Kawhi is so locked in. I'm getting so many texts from Kawhi, with ideas about how we can play better. And it's,
prove it.
Yeah.
Tell me the receipts.
Yeah. Show up at practice, show up on that bench, be a contributor, be a leader, be locked in. And he is certainly not locked in.
Does Kawhi like basketball? because I don't get the feeling he does. Like, I know there are a lot of professional athletes who they grow up and they're really good at this sport and they know they can make a lot of money. It can be their way out. It can be their way to a better life. They can set their family and themselves up for generations to come if they do it right. And so they do it and they play, and no, they don't love it. It's not their passion, but they do it and they get out. And for the most part, they enjoy it, right? I mean, winning can be really fun, but there are those athletes that don't love to play the sport as much as other guys. It's their dream. It's their everything. That's what they've always dreamt of, and they get there and it's unbelievable. And every game is this rush of emotions and excitement. Kawhi doesn't look like he wants to be there, even when he is playing.
Yeah.
I'm starting to, and I know it's like, oh, that's his personality, but now I'm kind of like, I don't know. Does he really want to play basketball?
It's
Or is
so
he just
weird.
good at it. I mean, his hands are ginormous. His body is insane. Was he just built to play basketball? And so he's playing basketball.
Well, and it's so crazy. You look at his time with San Antonio, and a lot of his skills he developed while working with Chip England and Spurs player development coaches. Chad Forcier, who's now an assistant with the Milwaukee Bucks, was part of that. And obviously, and I've often credited Chad Forcier and Chip England in making Kawhi a better player, but it doesn't happen unless Kawhi bought in. And very early on, Kawhi bought in and developed his three-point shooting better than it was when he came to San Antonio out of San Diego State, developed his free throw shooting better, bought into pop and defense, became a top 3 defensive player, and people now will call him the best all-around two-way player in the NBA. And he doesn't seem, by all reports, Shannon, to be a guy who's into clubbing, into social media, into bling. I mean, so my guess, based on his San Antonio experience, was he did love basketball. Of course, then everything went sideways, and what he's doing now in LA, he did in San Antonio. He questioned the medical staff. When the staff said, "You're ready to play," he said, "No, I'm not." Apparently he was listening to his Uncle Dennis. Things got really weird in San Antonio, and we all know what happened. They went south. He wound up in that trade for Toronto, wins the title in Toronto, and here he is in LA, and it's a lot of deja vu in San Antonio. His last full season before he wigged out, it was the Western Conference Finals against the Golden State Warriors, where he gets the injury, the ankle injury, Zaza Pachulia moving underneath him on a jump shot. And there were leaks subsequent to that series where reportedly the Spurs medical staff said, "You're cleared to play." And he said, "Nope, I'm not ready." And there are now reports that is happening in Los Angeles with the Clippers, a very similar circumstance in another Western Conference Finals.
What makes this guy happy? Because again, I don't see the love for basketball. I see the like for basketball, and I see that he doesn't want to do the work outside of those 4 quarters. I mean, and we've talked about him being late to practice, or saying we're not having practice today, or I'm not coming to, like, I don't get it. I don't get it. And I don't, and you think of how quiet he is in the platform that he has. We mentioned last week, there was that New Balance ad that ran during the last Hawks-Bucks game, and he's not even in it. And he is arguably one of the profile faces of New Balance, and he's got his own New Balance shoes. And he's not in it. Like he has all these other opportunities because of how great he is on the court. And he doesn't, his whole thing is just crazy to me.
And on top of all of that, everything you described, Shannon, he is arguably, when he's playing and when he's not hurt and when he wants to play, a top 3 player in the NBA. I mean, when he's locked in,
isn't that annoying?
It's crazy. So, I mean, if you're Steve Ballmer, the owner of the LA Clippers, what do you do now? You're building a new arena. You've got this incredible asset in Kawhi Leonard, but he wigs out, and he's wigging out right now, and he is injury prone, and he's not a leader. And you could argue what's so weird about, to use a term like maybe a cancer in that locker room, nobody's a cancer in the locker room when they're the best damn player on your team. Yet this may be a first in the NBA and in all of sports to be one of the best players in the league, but still be kind of a cancer in the locker room. It's crazy. It's weird.
Yeah. I'd almost say like he's a virus because that kind of attitude can spread.
Yes.
I mean, if you come in unhappy, then people are unhappy with you, and then it's just an attitude that the team takes over. Kawhi, I don't get you, dude.
Yeah.
Top to bottom. It's not even about basketball anymore for me, man. What's up with you? Sit with your team.
Amen. Sit with your team, be a leader, support them, and when you can play, find a way to get out there and play. Coming up, Shannon's Salty Shakedown. Always enlightening and entertaining and always salty, maybe some extra salt on this Monday morning. This day in sports history, sports birthdays, and more. Coming up in the 8 o'clock hour, Andy Everett, our golf guru. We're getting ready soon for the British Open. We'll talk some golf with Andy. And of course, Andy, the voice of UTSA athletics. We're getting closer and closer to college football season. We might jump into some college football as well with Andy. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney. Dave Ayler's your soundscape stylist. I'm Chris. Till 9, it's the Chris Duel Show. Woo! Today's iced tea, HEB unsweet TX for Texas brewed tea. Thank you. Nothing but the finest. Last week I bought some. I don't like sweetened tea. I don't like the taste of it, and just the if I drink it, the sugar in it will cause my weight to skyrocket, for the love of God. So I don't drink it. But I grabbed it, and I thought I grabbed unsweet tea, and I grabbed 2 big old jugs of sweet tea. The horror. The horror. John Williams, how can you say that? I just think that's a darker studio than this one's so bright. Chris Duel show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Dave Ayler, your soundscape stylist. Rocking the suburbs, rocking the free world, wearing his KISS t-shirt. Lots going on, lots to talk about in the world of sports. We will get into it. Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA playoffs, a disappointing College World Series for Longhorn fans, and therefore I believe everyone in the great state of Texas, as now we have to watch Mississippi State versus Vanderbilt if we're going to watch it. I don't know if I'm going to watch it. Wonder if Dak Prescott shows up now, Mr. Mississippi State alum. Maybe he'll show up now that they're in the final. Lots coming up in a moment. Shannon's Salty Shakedown. Before that, sports birthdays and this day in sports history. June 28th, 1971, the United States Supreme Court, in an 8-0 decision, overturns the draft evasion conviction of one Muhammad Ali, therefore enabling him to return to boxing. 8-0 decision. You look at the Supreme Court now, and it is typically so divided. There are unanimous decisions are rare, and thank goodness they did the right thing and enabled Muhammad Ali to return to boxing. Of course, he would very swiftly lose to Smokin' Joe Frazier in his return to boxing, but then come back and beat Frazier later down the road. This day, June 28th, 1975, reigning PGA championship winner Lee Trevino, along with playing partners Jerry Hurd, Bobby Nichols, Jim Ahern, and Tony Jacklin, are struck by lightning at the Western Open. They're all struck by lightning. Luckily, they suffered minor burns, but my God, Lee Trevino was a big deal, man. That's crazy.
I thought this was history, Chris, not fairy tales.
That's not
Struck by lightning.
Struck by Lee Trevino, struck by lightning on this day in 1975. That would scare that, and they suffered minor burns. That would scare the heck out of me.
You're supposed to go buy a lottery ticket after that, right?
Yes.
The rule.
Buy a lottery ticket, go to Vegas. Absolutely. My God. This day in 1987, Baseball player Don Baylor, at the time with the Boston Red Sox, set the career hit by, you don't want to set this record, set the career hit by pitch mark at 244. He was hit by 244 pitches up to this day in 1987 when he set the new record. By the time his career ended, he would be hit by 267 pitches. The player with the modern day record, Craig Biggio of the Astros, was hit by 285 pitches. And it's funny we should bring up Craig Biggio. On this day in 2007, he became the 27th member of the 3,000 hit club as he went 5 for 5 against the Colorado Rockies. Biggio could hit the ball and could get hit by the ball, apparently. That's sports history. Now time for some sports birthdays. Born on this day in 1941, American Major League Baseball pitcher Al Downing. If you know baseball history, you will remember that name. Al Downing was born in Trenton, New Jersey. It was Al Downing who allowed Hank Aaron's record-breaking 715th home run on April 8th, 1974. Speak of the devil, born on this day in 1949, Don Baylor, who in 86. So that happened on his birthday. He was hit by a pitch for the 244th time. Happy birthday, Don Baylor. He was born in 1949. Where? In Austin, Texas. Don Baylor, in 1979, he was the American League RBI leader. He would go on to be a manager as well. And finally, born on this day in 1960, pretty good quarterback, John Elway, Hall of Fame quarterback, Denver Broncos, two-time Super Bowl winner, back-to-back in Super Bowls 32 and 33, and a dude who retired after winning the Super Bowl. That was pretty cool, John Elway. David Robinson did that in the NBA, by the way, after winning the title. John Elway, born in 1960 on this day in Port Angeles, Washington. Happy birthday, John Elway, Don Baylor, and Al Downing. That's sports birthdays and this day in sports history. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you need it on a Monday. You might even be feeling salty yourself. Now you're going to feel even saltier. Here it is, your Monday edition of Shannon's Salty Shakedown.
All right, we've been talking a lot of Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau as of late, thanks to that rivalry that seems to heat up, especially when it takes to social media after a tournament. But for anyone watching the Travelers Championship over the weekend, you may have noticed Brooks Koepka sunk a shot from 156 feet out. And then he turned to the camera and he said, Justin Thomas, while giving the money sign. They've got a side bet going on, Chris, and it goes on all season long.
Wow.
Anytime they sink a hole from 50 plus feet, that's $1,000 the other player owes them.
Woo!
Apparently this is a known thing. I was not cued in until this weekend.
Nor was I.
And if this was any other sport, you'd feel like you wouldn't allow it, right? I mean, that's the whole thing with the Raiders moving to Vegas, and we don't want players to be betting on their own things. And we know when guys go out and they golf and they play in their foursomes and that's what they do, they bet. But the fact that they're live betting on themselves with each other throughout the year, I think is a lot of fun. I hope nothing comes, I hope they don't get called out for it or fined for it, whatever. But I do love this rivalry because it's obviously a friendly rivalry. Brooks Koepka then shared the video of the shot that the PGA Tour put on their Twitter, and Brooks captioned it with "Stray cash, homie," to which Justin Thomas responded, "Damn it. I don't know what the tally is, who owes how much to whom at this point in the season, but I do love this rivalry because it's nice to have a positive rivalry, right? A
Yes.
friendly rivalry, something that we can look for when they're playing, maybe when they're even playing together, that they're just hoping and sitting aside one another saying, man, I really hope he doesn't sink this one because I'm already in the hole for $2,000. What say you, Chris?
It sounds fun, and I agree with you. This is something that maybe a few years ago people might raise their eyebrows at in-game gambling between players. I think across the board in America, gambling is becoming more mainstream. Obviously, there are some people who have a gambling problem, just like some people have a problem with substance abuse. You got to be careful about that. But I mean, you look at the fantasy sites like FanDuel, you look at all of the gaming going on. You mentioned earlier in the show, and it's true, the NFL Combine may move, and it may move to Vegas. Vegas wants to do live gambling on the NFL Combine. So, yeah, I think this is cool. I think it's fun. And I think they should publicize, as you mentioned, the ongoing tally. I think we as fans, it'd be kind of fun to keep track of this.
And if I'm Bryson DeChambeau, I'm on the outside looking in, being like, "That's the relationship I want. I'm just trying to have fun with this rivalry, and you're being mean to me about it." Whatever, I love it. The new duo in golf, Brooks Koepka and Justin Thomas. All right, moving on to some NHL news. As we know, the Stanley Cup Finals are quickly approaching here, Chris. And Montreal is a team that has made it to the finals this year, their first since 1993. And to celebrate, fans took to the street. And Chris, it was not a pretty sight. Multiple cop cars turned over. 8 cop cars in total were damaged. 15 people were arrested. 60 tickets were given, and 2 officers were injured in celebrations over the weekend in Montreal for the team and their trip to the Stanley Cup Finals. Chris, this is just them getting to the finals. What happens when they win a game in the finals? What happens if they win the finals? I thought Canadians didn't get down like this. I thought they were all about Tory and, I don't know, other stereotypes of Canada riding on mooses or something. Why, Chris? Why is it happening?
And I go back to Spurs fans here, and it is my point of reference. I've always been so proud in the 5 championships the Spurs have won. We all pour into the downtown streets. We honk horns. We party. We dance in the streets. But almost no violence, no windows shattered, no police cars turned over. I don't get that. I really don't. And I would hope as well, when the Longhorns beat USC in that national championship game with Vince Young, I don't remember rioting in the streets of Austin whenever.
A lot of honking.
Yeah. You honk, you party, you drink, you lift a beer into the sky, you celebrate, you wave your flags. I think it speaks very negatively on a fan base and on a city when you do that. And you're right. I don't think of Canadians as being this violently rowdy. That's a little weird to me.
As I said, I'm just concerned because this was just them making it to the finals. What happens if they win?
Something to watch.
I don't even.
Yeah.
What did the police do? They can't show up in the cop cars because they're just going to get flipped over. And who knows how much those are worth a piece. All right, moving on to a bit of another disaster. Chris, the Tour de France is going on. It kicked off. And during stage 1, a woman with a sign was she was holding it out a little too far into the road, trying to get like a picture, a money shot of her being with the riders, whatever. The sign, for anyone wondering, apparently was a German and French mix that translated to "Go Granny and Grandpa." So a shout out to her grandparents. People don't know if this person is an actual criminal, if this was planned. The people who host the event say it was deliberate. They are now looking for her because, Chris, she was holding out this sign. One biker hit it, and that ended up turning into 24 plus bikers hitting the pavement.
Yeah.
Stage 1 of the ride of the Tour de France. It included an entire team, actually, who was still clumped together at that moment. What? We went into the weekend talking about the World Series and the NBA playoffs and watching the MLB, like more sticky tart checks and things like that. I don't think, few people commented, "Hey, I'll be watching the Tour de France," but I don't think we watched it with the intentions of seeing wrecks. That's what we watch NASCAR for. And here we are, stage 1, and it's not even a biker hitting a biker. It's a biker who ran into a cardboard sign that then ended in 24 plus bikers going down. This woman is now on the run because she folded up her sign and left. The police are looking for her because the Tour de France wants to sue. I mean, it's the crime of the century, it seems like. She's on the run because of her sign for Granny and Grandpa. I can't. I would have never imagined a story like this coming out of the Tour de France. Chris, do you define her as a criminal?
She not officially yet. She could have been just a very and you look at the footage of this, and my God, two dozen doesn't do justice to just the extent of this pileup and this wreck. But so I mean, I don't know yet. I mean, she's wearing, and I'm looking at the footage, she's wearing these big old sunglasses, which is going to make her a little harder to identify, and that almost makes you wonder. I guess a lot of people wear sunglasses, but I wonder if that disguises her a little bit and if that might have been intentional. But it's going to be fascinating to see if they can find her and if they can get to the bottom of this. And if she was just a fan who went just a little too far and stepped a little too far into the road, my God, what an infamous moment in sports history this is going to be for this woman, one way or another.
Because the police there do say they believe it was deliberate. I wonder if like forensics and there are people who study handwriting, if maybe they can study the picture of the sign, and somehow get to her that way. I mean, if she did do it on purpose, I mean, so far you're getting away with it. And it should be. But this is stage one. What if now people are, look how much attention she's getting?
Yeah.
What should I do during stage two?
Ooh.
Because when you think about the race, it's kind of like golf, right? I mean, they're right on top of the road, right where all the spectators. I mean, it's kind of weird too that you're in this one spot for this long thing, and then boom, there they go, and then it's over. But you're that close, and something like this could happen. Kind of surprising, it doesn't happen more often. But a lady with a sign is now the biggest criminal known around the world. As of today, they have yet to find her. So we'll keep you posted.
Well, and if she is a criminal, and if this was supposed to cause a wreck and a pileup, I mean, there are cameras right there on her doing this.
I mean, she was posing for him.
Yeah, so I can't imagine this would be premeditated and you would expect to get away with this. I mean, unless it's so sophisticated that there was like an immediate, like someone, like a getaway car and someone immediately, and maybe, she had a wig and those sunglasses come off and she's blonde instead of brunette. Unless it was that sophisticated that within moments she's in a crowd and off comes one wig, off come the sunglasses, and you can't. She looks like a completely different woman. I don't know.
Yeah. Also, if the idea of it being deliberate, it's in the first stage. So there's not, I guess, a ton at stake as far as riders and where they fall in the race versus maybe if you do it in a later stage. I'm not super into the biking world, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty interesting. One of the weirder stories I think that's out there today. Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? No, where in the world is Lady with Sign? We are all looking for her. If you know her, let the Tour de France. There you have it. Salty Shakedown for a Monday.
A very outstanding Salty Shakedown as always, and we will keep an eye out throughout the week in the sports world to see if that woman is apprehended who caused the pileup at the Tour de France. Another Olympic story, and Olympics with each passing day, Shannon, we're less than a month away. July 23rd, here we are on June 28th. We move into the month of July midweek this week, but July 23rd is the official start of the Tokyo Olympics, and a major name has pulled out. Wimbledon is underway, and I'm sure we'll be talking Wimbledon as it rolls forward, but Serena Williams is skipping the Tokyo Olympics. She has been a staple of the U.S. Olympic tennis team for a number of Olympics. She's won it a number of times, but she is declining to say why she won't participate. But she did indicate to reporters at Wimbledon that she will not be there. It is viewed as a blow not only to the Olympics themselves, because obviously she is one of the biggest names in sports. We talk about the GOAT all the time. Is it Tom Brady in football? Is it Michael Jordan or LeBron James in basketball? Clearly the GOAT in women's tennis, not only for women's tennis, but you look internationally, even in the Olympics, is Serena Williams. So Tokyo and the Olympics can't be happy about her not being a part of it.
Yeah, and think of her not being there. I mean, she's getting up there in age, and this was probably going to be her last go. So now reflecting back on 2016 and not realizing that that would be her final Olympics is, you wish you could watch it over again. It was also interesting that the comment, she didn't explain why she wasn't going, right? And it was, well, I'm not on the list, so I'm not going. So it's almost like, was she just not even considered, or considered and make, it's very strange. It's one of the bigger tennis events that I typically pay attention to, because it's, USA, bring that medal home, baby. So it'll be sad without. And the doubles, like, is her sister going? Because they usually play doubles together
Yeah,
in the Olympics.
that's a great
And I know
question.
last time, I don't think they got gold. So I was hoping they could come back and do that, but I guess not.
And that opens up the question, because you automatically assume if Serena Williams is going to go, that Serena's going to get gold for Team USA. Who now becomes your favorite in the Olympics and for Team USA to bring home the gold? So that's going to be a fascinating story to track, and we'll take a look at that as well. Coming up, you've got a sports update coming at you at the top of the hour, and then we got a lot more to talk about from the world of sports. NBA playoffs. Trae Young injured last night by the official, stepping on his foot, rolling his ankle, as Shannon has mentioned. MRI coming this morning for Trae Young. And tonight, the Phoenix Suns trying to close out the LA Clippers, and I kind of hope they do. We talked a little Kawhi Leonard. We got to talk more NFL football. We move into July this week. July is the month of NFL training camps open. So we'll dive into the NFL as well. And we'll be joined by our golf guru, Mr. Andy Everett. So we'll talk a little PGA, get ready for the British Open. And he is the voice of UTSA athletics. Maybe it's time to talk a little college football as well. She's Shannon Salty Sweeney, Dave Ayler making the show go. It's the Chris Duel Show. Jorge says it's time to put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame. I would agree with that, Jorge. I think it would be sad. And I know they're punishing him. If you remove, his betting on baseball, which for the most part happened as a manager, just his play as a player, I would agree with that. I think he should be in. And I just, Jorge says, Z, and NBA playoffs put him to sleep. I just think it's very sad when a player gets in after they've passed, when you could have honored them when they were alive. In the NFL, it happened to Ken Stabler. It happened to Bob Hayes, wide receiver of the Cowboys. When you can, honor these players while they're alive. For the love of God. Jason says at least next Monday is a holiday. Yeah, for most people, thank goodness. Tracy Bogart says, I learned how to slide head first watching Pete Rose. I slid into base head first my whole life, including now as an adult softball player. Wow. Here we go. 8 o'clock hour.
This is the Chris Duel Show. Now, Chris Duel.
Lots going on in the world of sports, and we are all over it on a Monday morning, June 28th, the final Monday in the month of June. It is the Chris Duel Show, along with Shannon Salty Sweeney, Dave Ayler wearing his Kiss Army t-shirt is your Soundscape stylist. As always, we've got live video coming at you. If you want to be a part of the live video feed, lots of ways you can access it. You can access it through Facebook Live, either AM 1300 The Zone or Ticket 760's Facebook page. There are YouTube portals, YouTube access to the video, as well as Twitch. Coming up just after the bottom of the hour at 8:35, we'll talk PGA and more with Andy Everett, our resident golf guru. And we'll talk about the British Open. We'll talk about the side wager that Brooks Koepka has going on that Shannon talked about earlier in the Salty Shakedown. Might even get into some college football with Andy. Speaking of college football, Shannon, and I know this is on your radar, it was on your notes, a player moving from college to the pros. He hopes former Navy cornerback Cameron Kinley, we've talked about him, how the Secretary of the Navy does not want to grant him an exemption to fulfill his obligation to the Navy a little later so that he can play football. He's an undrafted free agent with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers currently, and he is now enlisting or trying to enlist a higher authority, a very high-ranking official to maybe help him with his apparent dispute with the United States Navy.
When your boss says no, do you go and ask his boss? If you get a different answer? So publicly too?
Rarely a good idea. Rarely works.
I don't know if if they would punish him for that, but I mean, you probably aren't on the good side of your boss, and he certainly isn't going to reconsider now for any final plea to get to stay and play in the NFL.
Yeah, to connect the dots, he is asking the commander-in-chief now to intervene on his behalf. He is asking President Joe Biden. Now, what's weird about this, Shannon, and there are other NFL players in other branches of the service who have gone to other academies who are playing in the NFL, a player who graduated from the Air Force Academy, a player who graduated from West Point, who have gotten the exemption that Cameron Kinley is asking for, but apparently has not gotten. And this guy, I mean, president of his class, an incredible grade point average, by all accounts, a model cadet. It's a very bizarre situation that he's going through. Yet, I agree with you. If there's anything that's going to probably make the Navy dig in further, it's going over their head and now appealing to the president to intervene on your behalf.
Yeah, and I'm not a part of the president's cabinet. I don't know all his goings-ons and what his day-to-day is like, but I don't know what priority that takes. I don't know what priority that takes, and I don't know if it's the best look to say, yeah. Forget the U.S. duties. Go play with the weird football, the weird shaped ball. Do that.
Well, and in his defense, though, he's not asking to forget his duties and his obligation. I mean, he's saying he's willing to fulfill his obligation. He just wants it deferred. He wants to be able to play NFL football for now, and then in the off season, either work with the Naval Reserves or figure out a more creative way to defer his obligation, yet still meet his obligation, apparently.
I wonder what his role is within the Navy, right? Because especially when you graduate from one of those academies, like, you are so smart. You are very smart. You are smarter than the average bear. And I wonder if their side now, especially with the more we know about CTE and things like that, if they see it as, if you go out there and get injured, you're, whether it be the head or your body, or it could somehow affect the work that we want you to do here and the work that you signed on to do prior to getting into the NFL.
It's a good question.
I can see the argument for both sides.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take one.
Yeah, and as part of this story, Bruce Arians, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers head coach, has reportedly given the player in this case, Cameron Kinley, until training camp to get this sorted out. Training camp for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers begins on July 24th, a little over 3 weeks from now. So, Bruce Arians, so apparently this guy's going to get a shot, and apparently, he's got an invite to training camp. As we mentioned, he's an undrafted free agent, so you would think his chances of making this team, and we've talked about it, Shannon, the fact that they're returning everybody. This is the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're returning everybody. I got to believe that an undrafted rookie cornerback The odds of any undrafted rookie cornerback making this team is going to be long, but there's a slot waiting for him if the Navy will allow him to participate in training camp beginning on July 24th.
See, and that's the other thing, is that he's now jumped over his boss to ask the president to play in the NFL. What if the president grants it? He goes to training camp, he doesn't make the team, and then he has to go back like a dog coming back with their tail between their legs.
Yeah.
It didn't work out the way I thought it would.
Well, and I got to believe if you're Joe Biden as well, it's bad PR for the president. And like you just said, Shannon, what level of priority in the scheme of things, in the mission of the United States Navy, and in the military mission as commander in chief for the president of the United States? Obviously, this is not as high as national security on a big scale, but I would say it is bad PR for the president to overrule the Secretary of the Navy in this case. That to me, that would be a bad look.
Like, what if he's a Bucks fan? What if people start? It's just because he's a Bucks fan and this guy's really good, and he
Right.
No.
And I would think if the president did intervene, the way it would happen is backdoor. I mean, if the president really wanted this guy to get a shot, I think he'd give a call to the Secretary of Navy and say, make it look like it's your call. I want you to do this. I don't want to publicly overrule you. Make it look like it's your call. And I think that's the way it would play out if it happened at all.
I agree. That sounds like the smartest move.
Yeah. All right. One more thing, and I just saw this, and it broke overnight. You know, we were talking about Becky Hammon and her future, and the fact that the Portland Trail Blazers are going with Chauncey Billups as their head coach after we had heard that Becky Hammon was a finalist for the Portland Trail Blazers job. Interestingly, new Boston Celtics head coach Ime Udoka is, according to Jay King, who reports on the Boston Celtics for The Athletic, Ime Udoka is finalizing a contract to add Spurs assistant coach Will Hardy to the Boston Celtics staff. It's interesting. The two coaches that are seen as, you know, possible heir apparents to Greg Popovich are Becky Hammon and Will Hardy. And when Pop would either, when he would miss a game, such as going to Tim Duncan's induction into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame, or get kicked out of a game, the coach that would take over would be either Will Hardy or Becky Hammon, depending on who was the scout coach for that team that the Spurs were playing. So you go and you look at the Spurs website and you click on assistant coaches, and the first two coaches that it lists are Will Hardy and Becky Hammon. So in the order of, and maybe it's alphabetical, it's Becky Hammon and then Will Hardy. But as you kind of connect the dots here, Shannon, if Will Hardy is leaving, and he's been with the Spurs organization for 10 years, started like Mike Budenholzer in the video room, but he's been with the organization for 10 years. If Will Hardy leaves, you've got to believe that Becky Hammon's status as, you know, the lead assistant to Greg Popovich is even further entrenched. And I got to believe, not that I think a lot of people were assuming that Will Hardy would be the heir apparent to Greg Popovich. A lot of people believe it would be Becky, but I think this further entrenches Becky Hammon as, you know, higher as an assistant coach in that Spurs organization.
If anything, for me, I see it as we know that Pop's time is coming to an end, whether it's this year or next year or even 2 years. And a lot of times when you see a new head coach take over, even when they've been an assistant of that team, they bring in their own people and they get the coaches around them that they want to be around them. And knowing that and being in that position and maybe knowing that he's not going to get the keys is now going elsewhere.
That's a great point. Yeah, and I've often speculated, Shannon, that if I'm Greg Popovich and you have a close relationship, and I'll bet he does, with Becky Hammon and Will Hardy and assistant coach Mitch Johnson, and we talk about Chip England, who's an assistant coach and a player development coach, I got to believe they have candid conversations away from the media. I think Becky Hammon and Will Hardy and the other coaches have an idea of what Pop's going to do, when he's going to do it, and who might be, the next in line as Spurs head coach. And you make a great point. Maybe Will Hardy knows something that the rest of the media doesn't know, and maybe he knows that his future might be better as an assistant coach to Ime Udoka in Boston than staying in San Antonio where he's been for the last 10 years.
Right, because whether or not it is Becky that gets that job, there's a chance that the new leader doesn't want him at that current position, or maybe he does have hopes to be a head coach one day, and this is just the best route for him to take. But I would lean more on the side of he knows Pop is leaving, more so than he feels like Becky is going to get that job over him.
And again, as we speculate, and clearly to underscore, it is speculation. The Spurs, as everybody knows, they're run probably more like the CIA. People call Greg Popovich CIA Pop, and nobody knows for sure. Obviously, I've said it many times, Shannon, I want Pop to stay around as long as he wants. I think the Spurs are a better team with Pop. And I would say, the Spurs are a better team with, he's 72 now, 73, 74, 75-year-old Greg Popovich than Becky Hammon, who, if Pop rides off into the sunset, I'm cool with Becky Hammon. But we don't know. But it is, as we read tea leaves, it's just another layer of intrigue, the fact that Will Hardy appears, according to reports, to be headed to Boston to sit on the bench alongside new head coach and former Spurs assistant Ime Udoka in Boston. So we'll see how that plays out. Now, something we haven't gotten into lately, and we talked about him last week, Shannon, Scottie Pippen, who gave an interview to GQ magazine and had a number of things to say, including throwing Kevin Durant under the bus, but also talks about his time in Chicago, talks about LeBron James, and apparently he's now kind of going toe-to-toe with Stephen A. Smith on the latest. So Scottie Pippen apparently staying in the headlines over the weekend.
This dude's Twitter timeline is just straight clickbait at this moment. I mean, one of the pictures he posted over the weekend was himself in the corner of some dark lit restaurant with a TV above him where it's on the 4-letter network, and they've got a still image of one of his quotes, and he's sitting there just sipping on his bourbon or whatever it is he's trying to sell. And then the next thing is this argument with Stephen A. Smith, and Scottie Pippen says LeBron won championships without any help. That's not right.
That's not. And I mean, let's go back to Cleveland. There was a guy named Kyrie Irving and a guy named Kevin Love. Let's see, in Miami, there was a guy named Chris Bosh and a guy named Dwayne Wade.
The big three.
Who I think was pretty good.
Yeah, they were all right.
And in Los Angeles, I would argue Anthony Davis being the Robin to LeBron James Batman. I would say Anthony Davis is a better player than Pippen ever was.
That's how they brought AD in. We need you to win a championship.
Yeah.
So I don't know maybe he's had too much of his own bourbon, is what I'm starting to believe. Or he realizes that it's working as far as getting his name out there and his product out there, and he's just taking it way too far at this point, and we all just need to be like, okay, we're done with you and not pay attention anymore. But it is just so annoying. Something about that, him watching back that 10-part documentary of The Last Dance has flipped a switch, and he is Scotty 2.0. and I guess I don't know if he even believes what he's saying or if he's just saying it to ruffle feathers at this point.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. We did not hear that much from Scottie Pippen before the Last Dance documentary came out. Now it's out. Now he's very vocal. Now he's active on social media. Now he's got this bourbon that he's hawking. Now he's given the interview to GQ, and now he's picking fights with people, including Kevin Durant. No, by the way, Kevin Durant eviscerated him with a retort about his not going into the game when he was asked to back in his playing days. On Twitter, Kevin Durant got him back, but clearly Scottie Pippen started it. And how ridiculous now to pick fights with Stephen A. Smith, who clearly has a platform and a better platform than Scottie Pippen does. It's a little ridiculous.
I think the only thing we can do, Chris, you and I, is to try the bourbon prior to going on air and just seeing what comes out of our mouth, because maybe at the end of the day, that's what's going on.
That could be. And he may realize, and he may have handlers and advisors who are realizing, the more you pop off on, I mean, here we are again for the second straight week talking about Scottie Pippen and ridiculous things he said. And maybe in a weird way, there are some people who are going to take a look at his bourbon. Maybe this is all about putting his name out there and hawking his bourbon. It could be.
I'd love to see a list of all of the athletes' respective liquors, mostly tequilas, but of course bourbon's in there too, and just see like the year-end rankings.
It's a great question. That's a great point. And
he's coming in top 10. And
is it directly corresponding with the greatness of that athlete or the popularity of that athlete? Yeah. And I would imagine so. I mean, if you're a tequila drinker, I don't think your first move is, Tom Brady's tequila or whoever is hawking whatever. There are probably there's Cuervo, there's Patron, there's specific tequilas that are known to be really good tequilas. I think you probably, if you're a fan of this guy, it's like if Roger Staubach, my favorite athlete, had a tequila, I'm trying it sounds ridiculous that Roger would have a tequila, but if Roger has a tequila, I'm trying the Roger Staubach tequila.
I drink Justin Timberlake's tequila because it's the Justin Timberlake, and it actually is very good. But I mean, that's not to say if it wasn't good, I would not be drinking it.
Right.
But to this has me going back to Michael Jordan being like, Republicans buy shoes too. Well, Scottie Pippen, fans of Kevin Durant and Ben Simmons and Doc Rivers probably drink bourbon too.
Yeah.
And here you are just dragging them through the mud for clicks. No. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done with you and your bad hair.
Yeah.
I don't like it one bit.
Oh, but I do like his new hair. You think he's got bad hair now? You don't like the new hairstyle?
No.
For Scotty?
For Scotty shaved head.
I'm kind of liking his new hair.
It's like it kind of looks like Thomas Edison at times.
Yeah.
The way he's got it all up. But
it is interesting. You drink. Is it Justin Timberlake tequila?
It's called 901.
Nice. And who is George Clooney has some kind of an alcohol. I think it's a tequila as well.
Yeah.
That he's hawking.
Doesn't he have a winery too? Or
probably. He's George Clooney. He's probably got a lot. Well, it's so funny. This just flashed in my head. And I don't even know that Tim Duncan, I guess he must have given it the green light. He had a cereal at HEB for late in his career. It was called Dunkin' O's.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I went out and tried it because, hey, it's Tim Duncan cereal. And I'm a grown middle-aged man, and I'm eating Dunkin' O's because Tim Duncan has a cereal at HEB. If it was Kevin Durant O's, I probably wouldn't have tried it. Or certainly if it was Karl Malone O's, I'm not eating that cereal. But Tim Duncan O's at HEB, yeah, give me some of that for breakfast. Let me pour some milk on my Duncan O's. So yeah, I bought some to eat, and I bought, so there were friends of mine from out of town who wanted like the collector's boxes. So I bought some to,
people.
Yeah. It's like, I want my box of Dunkin'. My friend Eddie Gosling, who lives in Southern California and grew up here, and it's like, I want my Dunkin' O's. So I had to send him boxes to LA.
Like, what do you do with those boxes? Because aren't bugs eventually going to invade that and then it become a problem? You would
think so, unless the interior plastic wrap is done well.
Something's got to happen there.
All right. Coming up, a man who probably didn't buy the Dunkin' O's because I just can't imagine Andy Everett eating the Dunkin' O's, but we'll ask him. Coming up, we'll talk PGA Tour. We'll talk side bets. Does Andy Everett have any side bets in golf with another golfer? Does he need to start having them? We'll talk a little golf and more with Andy Everett, who is also the voice of UTSA Athletics. And Andy's going to join us next. Dave Ayler, your soundscape stylist. She is Shannon Salty Sweeney. We're hanging out with you till 9. Thanks for being with us on the Chris Duel Show. Anthony, I don't know what happened to the audio. That's news to me. Oh, that's loud. July 11th through the 18th is the British Open. Okay. Yeah, Tracy, I'm not sure what's going on with those levels. Sorry, it's not ideal. Hopefully, we will get it corrected. Tracy, to my knowledge, David did not get out of his commitment early. I think he had a 4-year commitment. I don't think he got out early. I don't remember that being a thing. I could be wrong. That was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Thanks, man. What do you have? Oh, okay. Thanks. Here we go. Woo! Woo! Mamma mia! It's the Chris Duel Show with Shannon Salty Sweeney. Every Monday at this time, we talk golf, we talk college football, we talk sports with Andy Everett, who is our golf guru, host of the golf show on Ticket 760, Saturday mornings at 8 o'clock. If you're outside San Antonio or inside San Antonio, you can catch that as well on the iHeart Radio app. He is also the voice of UTSA Athletics. Birds up, Andy Everett, how you doing on this Monday morning?
Very well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Shannon brought this up earlier in her Salty Shakedown. Brooks Koepka holes out at the Travelers Championship and says the name Justin Thomas, and we find out there's a side bet between the two of them for $1,000 whenever that happens from 50 yards out or more. Are these side bets common on the PGA Tour, to your knowledge?
Yeah, I think they are, but I don't think they're publicized in the way that Brooks Koepka said that or did that. I remember going to the LA Open, I think it was 1991, and I went there for the practice rounds. And Andrew McGee was in a group that were coming up the 18th hole, and they all stopped at the side of the 18th green after they finished. And the players were starting to walk away, go back up the hill to practice or go home or whatever they were going to do. And Andrew says, "Hey, wait a second, guys, I got some cash coming my way." And they all came back and paid him whatever, I guess, bets he won. Phil Mickelson is famous for doing that, and so famous that in one of the, and this is usually Monday, Tuesday in their practice rounds. Wednesday, they're hanging out with their pro-am partners. Thursday through Sunday, they're more serious. But on Tuesday practice rounds, Phil's been known to wager several $1,000s. And when they were at St. Andrews in 2015, a couple of the guys lost to him, and they reached in their wallet and handed him dollar bills and $100 bills. And he goes, no. We're in Scotland. It's pounds when we're over here. And the pound has more value than the dollar usually. So Phil got pounds instead of dollars. So, yeah, it happens from time to time, but I didn't know that someone had a standing bet in competition with other players as to how they would settle scores or side bets.
Andy, what is all this doing for Brooks's brand? Because 1 week he's got this heated rivalry with the likes of Bryson DeChambeau, and now he's got this friendly rivalry for Justin Thomas. I mean, whether he's winning or not, he's kind of becoming the face of the PGA at this point.
Yeah, he's. I think it's great. I think a lot of people look at the PGA Tour negatively in that these guys are robots and they don't really care about anybody but themselves, and there's no personalities. And I think anytime that you can show the other side of you, it creates an opportunity for more people that don't necessarily understand the nuances of golf, and kind of attract another crowd. And I think that anytime that you have the DeChambeau Koepka rivalry, or anytime you have notoriety, as long as it's not too negative, I think it builds your brand and the brand of the PGA Tour and golf in general.
And, Andy, you mentioned earlier these side bets, are often not publicized. That's why, it was the first I had heard of a side bet like this. Do you think maybe, we found out last week that the NFL Combine, may be on the move. It might go to Las Vegas, and there might be betting on the Combine. With betting in general and prop betting and fantasy betting becoming bigger and bigger in this country, do you see that as something that might be happening with golf? Maybe some odd prop bets that fans might be getting into more, or is that already a thing?
I think it's already a thing. I don't think there's any golf course on the planet that you can go to where somebody during the day is not gambling. Now, there are groups who never gamble. There are 3 or 4 to 8 friends that gather every weekend or on a certain day of the week and play golf, and they're just out there for the camaraderie and the fun. But I think every golf club has that group or several groups, and some play for $5 a hole or $1 a hole or 50 cents a hole, and some play for $1,000. It just, as I remember one year Dan Patrick asking Tiger Woods, when are they going to play? And Tiger said any time, and Dan said, what are we going to play for? And Tiger said, whatever makes you nervous. And so every recreational golf club in the world, and a lot of these members or these PGA Tour players are members at clubs, and they'll play with really good members sometimes, and they'll give them strokes and things like that to settle to even the bet just a little bit. But the PGA Tour player usually is going to win those. But yeah, I think sports in general needs to follow the NFL. And what has made the NFL the number one sport on the planet, or at least in the United States, is the fact that you can gamble on it, and then the growth of fantasy football. And you have people that have no idea who's winning a division, no idea what any one player is or one team is doing and on draft day or any other day, but they know what their fantasy team's doing. And they're playing for something, whether it's bragging rights or cash. I think everybody enjoys that, and that's what's made the NFL popular. I think we're starting to see more and more of these sports franchises. Let's control it so that the elements don't get in there to where we fix games or have the temptation of doing that if there's athletes involved. But let's put more eyes on our sport by figuring out a way how we can bet on it. And now with a lot of states, unfortunately not Texas, having legalized gambling, that's just going to create more opportunity for people to get involved with it. And I'm not a sports gambler on games and things like that. I will bet on my own golf game. I can control that. I don't like to bet on a lot of things I can't control, even casinos and horse races, which I have frequented. I don't do it very often because I'm not in control of that. But there's millions and millions of people that want to do that and can do it responsibly, and that's what creates the attraction to that I think any sport.
Andy, from side bet to rivalries, we now have John Rahm, after winning his championship, one-upping Phil Mickelson and chugging a beverage out of his trophy and then smashing a glow-in-the-dark golf ball. I think this just all adds to people gaining interest in the PGA. But with some of these antics, as I'm sure some of the PGA upperclassmen who are known to be a little more rigid, a little bit more, I guess, prim and proper. Was there a line that they're eventually going to draw, or are they able to see through the good and the amount of attention that the PGA is now getting because of this, and maybe seeing dollar signs instead?
And I think that, yes, there are clubs and there are people that are rigid and want everything to be proper. And yet, a lot of times, those same people that have those ideas, they have skeletons in their closets that I'm sure they wouldn't want out. But as long as nobody knows about it, they feel justified in still being rigid and whatever else, other adjectives you may want to use. And I noticed that too in Scotland. When I went to play at Muirfield, which is probably the most restricted club in Scotland, or one of them, they do have visitor days on Tuesdays and Thursdays. But as soon as you walk on the property, there is a greeter there that says, "Welcome to Muirfield. Here's our rules. I'm an employee. I have to follow the rules." And one of those rules is absolutely no cell phone use. They've relaxed the rule there to be able to for you to take pictures with your phone, since so many people now have a camera in their phone that's better than any one that they could buy. But they show you where the gate is, and if you want to make a phone call or a text or a tweet or post something on Facebook, you better be on the other side of that gate, or they're kicking you out, and you're not getting a second warning or anything of that nature. And I think one of the things that a lot of golf courses still have is a dress code. Most municipal courses do not, but a lot of golf courses and resorts and clubs for their members want, tailored shorts and pants and collared shirts, and not cutoffs and tank tops. And I'm not opposed to that if that's the way you want your club to be. But I do think that more and more people are going to get involved in golf when there's fewer, restrictions placed on those who are asked to come and play.
Talking a little golf with Andy Everett, our go-to golf guy. Now, Andy, the British Open is coming up on July 11th, but before that, July 6th is the match. Tom Brady and Phil Mickelson versus Aaron Rodgers and Bryson DeChambeau. Where do these rank on your must-see scale? I know you're a purist, so I know you're big time into the British Open, but how excited are you about the big match coming up?
The British Open, I will wake up at 6 o'clock that Sunday morning to watch the final round when it starts on when TV coverage takes place. Sometimes I don't get up real early on Thursday and Friday, maybe 6:30, depends on what I want to see. So yes, I will follow the British Open from opening tee shot almost to the end. Now, I think they start like at 2 a.m. Central Time, so I won't be up for the first shot, but I will definitely watch the final round that Sunday. The match, I don't care. The only reason I think people have watched it in the past was because of Tiger. And Tiger's the draw. And yeah, Phil and Bryson are going to be a little bit of a draw, and maybe Brady and Rodgers are, and I may see the highlights of it, but I just think that the made-for-TV stuff without Tiger isn't nearly what it is when Tiger's there. And so if I have nothing else to do and I'm flipping through the channels and it's on, I'll watch for a little while. But if there's a PGA Tour event opposite it, or if there's something else to do that day, that's not something that's must-see TV for me.
Finally, Andy, you are the voice of UTSA athletics, and we're moving this week into the month of July. And I know NFL training camps begin in late July, some around the 22nd, some on the 24th of July. For college football and specifically UTSA, when do we know when their so-called training camp, when they'll be practicing full-time, getting ready for the opener?
It usually starts the Friday or Saturday, the first Friday or Saturday in August. I haven't seen a specific date yet. I know we're 68 days away from UTSA versus Illinois in Champaign. And so I think everybody's looking forward to that. UTSA's had several players on different preseason polls. I think they'll have a lot of those same players on first and second team preseason all-conference USA teams. And I did see a Vegas thing, and Vegas always knows. If you want to know what the real prognostication is for your team, just check out what Vegas thinks. All the Conference USA teams, UTSA was the only one with an over-under win total of 8 or more, and UTSA's was 8. Marshall was 7.5, and everybody else was below that. And so I think UTSA will most likely go into the season as the conference favorite. And after last year, I think UTSA got people's attention. And this year, they won't be the hunter, they'll be the hunted. And so they're going to have to play even better because everybody will bring their best to whenever they play UTSA. All that said, that makes for a really exciting season and a lot of potential. But Jeff Traylor always says the definition of potential is what you're not, or what you're not yet. So UTSA is going to have to play good football in all of its games because people are going to be going for them this year.
Should be fascinating, and we'll talk a lot more football as the college and NFL seasons draw closer in the month of July. Andy Everett, always great stuff, sir. Have yourself a great week. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thank you. I'll see you soon.
All right. Andy Everett, the voice of UTSA Athletics, host of the Golf Show on Ticket 760, Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. Shannon, we didn't jump into it that much, but or at all, actually. The poll question this morning, do you support Major League Baseball's crackdown on pitchers using foreign substances on baseball? Kind of a close vote. 53% say yes, 47% say no. Probably should have had the option in there. Is this on the radar of non-baseball people? If you're not into baseball that much, do you really care about the crackdown? Might be a question for people.
Personally, I said no, just because I feel like they could have, if they really want to crack down on it, have someone in either like back in the bullpen or in the dugout and do all your checks there. Don't stop in the middle of play and at the end of each inning.
Amen. The crackdown is on as your first player was kicked out of the game last night. We'll talk more about that and more tomorrow in 21 hours. Shannon, outstanding Monday. We'll do this again tomorrow.
I'm ready.
Dave Ayler, you're with us tomorrow. You're with us through Wednesday, I think, this week.
That's correct. I'll be here most of the week.
We will see you tomorrow. Dave Ayler, thank you so much. And our thanks to Andy Everett. Don't forget tonight, the Phoenix Suns going to try to close out the LA Clippers. That's an 8:00 game. It'll be on the 4-letter network. We'll be talking about that and everything in the world of sports tomorrow. Have yourself a great Monday. Adios, amigos.